Hi, Thomas from Raconteur here. Search is evolving, fast. Queries are longer, intent is clearer, and the window to win attention is getting ever smaller. And this is where demand-led growth comes in. For brands and their agencies, it creates huge opportunities to use real-time signals, flexible creative, and AI-powered activations to make faster, smarter decisions. Today, we're joined by Claire Stanley-Manock, Chief Strategy Officer at Connective3, to unpack how this all works in practice. So let's get into it. So Claire, great to be joined by you today. Before we jump in, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Connective3?
Sure. We're a digital performance agency that really pride ourselves in growing our brands and driving real performance for them.
Thinking about the wider marketing environment, as search queries become longer and more contextual, what new opportunities is this creating for brands?
With the change in AI and how people are searching now, we're now seeing queries that are much, much longer than before, even like full sentences. So rather than things like red dress, and that's only going back 2-3 years, but it now be like red dress, cap sleeve, sequin, for work, Christmas party, and maybe even try on near me. And so they're getting much, much longer. But what that means is that if you have that red dress with the cap sleeves and it's available near that person, then you're more than likely to get the sale. So with the queries getting more specific, we're finding that conversion rates are increasing as well, which is ultimately driving efficiency for brands.
Do you think that particular operational challenges comes with this as well?
So the operational challenges is how many different keywords there then becomes, because you've effectively got millions and millions of different questions. No one person can ever think of all those different things, never mind manage it in an ad account. So Google always say that 15% of searches every day are new, and many of those are never seen again. So it's completely almost impossible to manage unless you lean into Google's AI, things like PMax and demand gen and even broad match. That's the way to unlock all those opportunities.
Something we hear more and more about, I guess, is demand-led growth. So what does this mean to you, and how does it change how marketers plan, spend and measure performance compared to more traditional fixed calendar approaches?
Yeah, so I think demand-led by nature needs to be led by demand. So therefore, if you are a company that, for example, deals in garden furniture, then you need to be prepared to push and put your budget when the weather gets good, and sometimes that's in February, sometimes that's as late as May. But what you can't do is try and force it to that, like you say, fixed calendar of budget, because then what happens is you spend all the budget in February and the weather's terrible, so people aren't looking for it. The return on ad spend is bad and you've ultimately lost out. So we need to make sure that brands are pushing and pulling when they see the demand is there.
So alongside AI and tech, Claire, what else is essential for brands to fully capitalise on this demand-led shift?
Alongside the budget agility and going where the demand is, there's two core things. One is creative, and the other one is data and signals. So signals is quite a new word, a new concept in marketing. And it's really, I think of signals like prompts. In terms of the more detailed prompt that you have in there, the better the output's going to be at the back end. So the better the campaign performance is going to be with the richer the signals. So to give you an example of this, we work with a tile client who had a PMax campaign that was, it was doing okay. It was doing well. But when we overlaid samples and sample audience data of people that had a sample previously, then all of a sudden the PMax campaign absolutely flew, because the system and the algorithms were really able to understand, okay, well, this is the type of customer that's buying tiles from this particular brand, and therefore it's able to drive like real efficiency, and the ROAS flew through the roof.
And I guess that will work really well if you've got very rich first-party data, but
yeah,
what about those brands and campaigns that don't?
So there are things that you can still do, enhanced conversions being one of them. And what that does is it reduces the impact of people pressing no and decline on cookies by backfilling that data on a server-to-server level at the back end. And then the other thing that you can do is, if you don't have that live audience data going into the platform, you can still download it and upload it, and that's a really good place to start.
You've also mentioned the importance of the creative side. Could you expand a little bit more upon that?
Yeah, absolutely. Creative is so important. It's up to 49% of a campaign's performance is due to creative. And I think historically, if you think sort of days of old, it was always, everything hung off a TV ad. And it was just different variations of that you may or may not have got for digital. Whereas now it's almost the opposite way around, and we need to have these lots of littles and lots of different versions of the ads. So again, let me give you an example on this. We work with a mattress client and we ran a test for them that was running a designed asset versus an organic social person to camera style asset. And the designed asset won in that A/B test. But when you put them both together into a third cell, that third cell dramatically outperformed each one individually. Because it's about having the right ad for the right person. You might like designed ads, I might like organic social ads. And similar to that, we also work a lot in the social bias framework, by which I mean things like social proof, awards, authority bias, things like next day delivery or which best buy, or all those sorts of things that just give us that confidence to buy. And every single client we've worked on that framework with, it's always massively improved performance. So it's really about having all these different assets in the campaigns so that the algorithms can pick and build in real time the right ad for the right person. And therefore, it's like marketing gold because you get the ad that's right for you.
You've essentially taken us through a process that will clearly help maximize reach. How do you balance that with the need to retain control, especially as AI begins to play a bigger role?
Definitely. I think AI is wonderful, but you can't just rely on it to do the entire job by itself. So how we do it at Connective 3 is we have this analogy of the sort of rocks in the jar, and let me explain that. So say, for example, you're using exact match, and your exact match terms, you fill the jar full of those exact match terms, and it's going to reach a limit where it can't get any more. And you think, right, well, I've maxed out search. But actually then if you have the pebbles, so you pour the pebbles in as broad match, then you'll get that incremental reach. And then there's still room in there to pour that sand on top as well. So your sand is your PMAX campaign. And that will ultimately let you really max out every single opportunity within search. But again, that's going to become finite. So then once you've reached that limit, then it's all about generating demand and growing that entire jar in itself through the aptly named demand gen campaigns.
And I guess if you're having a bigger jar and there's ever more pebbles and rocks and grit and all sorts of stuff filling it up, measurement is going to be really key to shoot at ROI of that. So does demand-led growth require a different approach to measurement in your opinion, particularly when you need insights that are credible at a senior and a board level?
Yeah, that's it. Board level credibility in your measurement and reporting is absolutely fundamental. And I think there's change required in a lot of marketers and a lot of agencies to speak the language of the CFO. So to move from your ROAS and your CPAs all the way through to profitability and margins and really anything of what is most important to that business. So say, for example, we worked with a client who overbought on garden furniture. And what happened with them was they were unable to sell their dining tables and chairs because ultimately they had too much of the garden furniture in their warehouse because they'd seen the demand rise for that during lockdown. So what that meant was the conversion rate was a lot lower because people were having to wait for the extra delivery time. So we ran an in-stock label against campaigns in Google AdWords to really empty out their warehouse. And it wasn't the most profitable month for them. It wasn't the biggest bar on the spreadsheet, but ultimately it solved their business problem. And I think if you can speak the language of the CFO and what matters to them, then you'll find that you can unlock budgets and really deliver ultimate growth.
Now, demand-led growth requires a cultural change in a business.
Yeah.
So how do you help teams and clients build the confidence to test, to fail, to learn and adapt quickly? And what are some of the most common challenges you see in this process?
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that you use the word fail there, because I think that's exactly right. And I think when you run 15 or more tests in a year, as we would recommend, they're not all going to go well. They're not all going to deliver like massive increases in performance. So if one happens to not go so well, then that's fine. That's still a learning and you can pivot and change and then off you go again in a different direction. So it's about learning fast and failing faster. But in order to do that, you need to be on the same page with both brand and agency so that it's not a surprise and you've made those decisions together. So again, if it doesn't work or if it goes well, then everybody can pat themselves on the back rather than it just being one side or the other.
I guess, how do you build that psychological safety to actually see failing as a positive?
It's about learning. And everything's a test and everything's valuable data. And knowing what not to do is as valuable as knowing what to do. I think that the challenge comes is where you might do something that doesn't work, but you haven't set it up in an A/B fashion. And therefore, you haven't learned anything. You've just potentially wasted a bit of budget.
And then to wrap us up, Claire, there's been some really great insights in this conversation, so thank you. If we think about the CMOs at home who are just starting out on this journey, what's the first step that you would recommend, and what are the early signals that indicate that they are on the right track?
Yeah, I have 3 recommendations. The first one is to really understand their business, understand the different levers there. For example, the example I gave before about the garden furniture in the warehouse is if they don't understand that their conversion rate on their marketing is decreasing because of an issue over in the warehouse, then they're not going to be able to move forward. You need to really understand that business first. The next thing is to work with the agency in order to implement that strategy and the strategies that are going to make those business changes a success into the campaigns. And then the third one is to really be prepared to invest in things that you've never invested in before, that have never had budget lines, such as data, and further investment into creative.
Great, thank you so much. 3 really valuable lessons there, I think, for any CMOs watching to take forward in their journey. Claire, thank you so much for joining me today. Really great discussion. And if you want to find out more, please visit raconteur.net.